Hola, hola. Estoy entrando en un meeting del Ayuntamiento de Fort Myers Beach. Sí, oh, no te preocupes. Bueno, te llamo luego. Adiós.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, please stay standing as we have an invocation. Heavenly Father, we ask that you bless us with your presence here today. Grant us the wisdom to see all things in true perspective. Grant us the patience to hear one another with open minds and hearts. Grant us the strength to meet all present challenges. May all we do this day bring honor to you and credit to ourselves. Amen. Amen. So, John, let's first do roll call. Patrick, could you start?
Present, Patrick Vaness.
Karen Woodson.
Jane Plummer.
Scott Safford.
John Herron is here, and Jason is out with COVID, son. And Forrest has a excused absence because his son has COVID, and Megan resigned last month, so she's not here. And Anita is here from Spain. Anita, can you hear us?
I can hear you perfectly, Jane.
Great, okay. So, John, one of the things that made me think about this as I was running late today, had I not been able to make it, we wouldn't have had a quorum, but we probably need to reorganize because we need to have a chair and a vice chair, because we don't have that.
We can put that on the next agenda. I think also the council will be considering and making an appointment for the replacement of Megan. And so we can do that when the new member comes back, or which essentially would be the next meeting. But for now, under the rules, you as the vice chair or the acting chair.
Okay, so do we have applications in?
Yes.
Okay, all right. All right, so we'll move on to approval of the minutes. Are there any changes or questions on the minutes? Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Scott first made the motion, and Pat seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Anita, did you vote?
Yes.
All right, passes unanimously. So then let's move on to our public hearing. Who is going to, staff going to present first? So why don't you go ahead and open that public hearing?
But
Or the variance, do I need to read that out?
no, I think that, are we going to do the variance first? Is that the?
I believe that's the way the agenda.
Okay, so anyone who's going to testify with regard to the variance application, if you could stand and raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth with regard to this matter? The witness has been sworn in. It is quasi-judicial nature, so the next thing would be for the LPA members to disclose any ex parte communication.
That is the next thing I was going to do. Anybody had ex parte conversation with anybody that needs to be disclosed? Patrick?
None for me?
Karen?
None,
None, just a drive-by.
Okay,
drive-by.
so,
None for me, Jane.
all good, thank you. So we can move forward. Do we need to read this variance in?
The item, I don't know if.
Variance 202-10114, approve with conditions, deny 5155 Williams Drive to allow a garage and habitable space 5.5 feet and 7 feet respectively, closer to the side yard property line than allow for under current LDC requirements. Okay?
Good morning. My name is Jason Smalley. I'm with the Town's Planning and Zoning Office. So, as was mentioned before, today we're presenting a variance to allow for additional living space. This is an addition to the rear of the house that will protrude into the side yard setback on the left-hand side. This is also a request for a new attached garage. This is a water lot, so please remember that the required setbacks for this lot are the same as the primary structure. This will be just addition of the primary structure since both requests are attached to the house itself. Under current code, the structure itself would require a 13-foot side yard setback. The request that has been asked for, as was mentioned before, is going to be a 7-foot setback for the living space in the rear of the home and a 7.5-foot setback for the garage. The living space, they're requesting a 6-foot setback. The garage is a 7.5-foot setback, so it's a 7-foot variance ask for the living space in the rear and a 5.5-foot variance request for the garage at the front of the house. I am open to any questions that you may have about the staff report.
Okay. Patrick, you have any questions? Karen?
No questions.
What, if we hadn't have changed or the council had changed the last 2 years, the setbacks, what would the setback would have been, 7.5 feet?
So the staff report says 7.5 feet. I would need to get clarification if the 10-foot water setback would have been relevant on this one. Under the existing code, obviously it doesn't meet it, but under previous code, at least the garage may have met that, but the living space still would have required a variance under all permutations of previous code.
Okay.
But the question I think was would the setback have been 7.5 feet?
That's what I would need to clarify. The staff report is indicating that it would have been 7.5 feet, but my understanding of the previous code for water, that would have been an interior lot. But for water lots, that would have required a 10-foot setback.
The side setbacks don't change on water. It's the back setback that would change on water.
So I would need to go back and look at the previous code. We reviewed it, as I said, under the existing code. It was already in effect by the time that we had received the application.
Anita?
Yeah, I found the wording of this, Jason. I don't know did you do this? I can't remember. Or was this the other? Well, it doesn't matter who did it. I found the wording of this difficult. So normally we say a side setback, or they're asking for a variance from a side setback of 15 to 7, a variance of a water setback from 25 to 10, whatever the case may be, stating what the setback requirement is and then what the variance is that they're asking. It doesn't really matter whether it's a garage or living space or whatever, it's the setback, right? So I think this could be a lot clearer, but I guess my real question, since Scott has sort of asked this, are you clear on what this is?
Oh, absolutely. So under current code, it would have required 13 feet because it's an addition to the actual primary structure. So this is not
Okay,
to be viewed as, for instance, a detached accessory structure, which may have more limited or more loose setback requirements. But this is really just two requests to expand the existing house. This is an addition for both asks.
okay,
So it would have
Okay.
required 13-foot setbacks under current code.
And
okay.
seeing that we're getting into the details a little bit, one thing I'd like to bring up is if we look at the new language, and I think I've expressed this before, not a big fan of the 15% in that new language, but there's an opportunity to provide a 30% setback with combined setbacks on both sides. So I looked at their survey. So if one side is 13 feet, combined setback would be 26 feet. Right now, on one side, they have 17.86 feet as a setback. So if they did a staggered setback to meet the 30%, the other side, they would require 8.14. So looking at it from that perspective, then it becomes a variance of plus or minus 2 feet. So just saying that to keep that in perspective.
That's interesting.
Yes, so I would defer to the applicant as to whether or not they might want to redesign. I don't know how that would affect the rear living space, since that side of the house has the pool already constructed on that side.
How would that,
From my perspective, I'm not suggesting that the applicant go back and change anything. It's just that when we look at how big of a request this is, or percentage-wise, if we look at it from a different way, and it's allowed by code, the setback is not quite as much of a request.
It helps you with one of the criteria.
It's interesting.
oh, it's a great way.
Okay, any other questions for Jason at this time?
Well, Jane, let me just ask Jason then. So, part of the variance criteria is that it is or is not the minimum variance. If you looked at it the way Patrick is explaining it, how would you feel about that? Would you have changed your view here that you have it as not the minimum? Would you think of that a little differently or no?
Again, I think in this case, this is a request to expand an existing home. We've got to take a look at the history. In 2013, there was an application to expand the home for accessory use, so it's functionally different than what's being asked today. But that was under the existing ownership, and they determined that they wanted to use what available space they were for outdoor use. So I think in this case, and I take Patrick's point to heart, this may, when we look at it, this may provide logically a little bit more justification for perhaps the garage, but I think we would still be stuck in a place where the living space in the rear of the house really couldn't be accommodated other than where they've asked for it currently, and that would still require a fairly large variance request.
Got it. Thank you very much.
Okay, we ready to hear from the applicant? Any other questions? Would you like to come up to the podium and please give your name, address for the record?
My name is Mark Jones. My current address is 9105 Point Ridge Lane, Bloomington, Indiana. But I own the home down here. For tax purposes, at this point, we're treating it as a vacation home, so we come down 2 weeks a year. But our initial intent when we bought the home was for a retirement home, with, in our mind, changing, remodeling, and doing things to it. Before I get into that, I'd like to thank the board for hearing me today, so thank you very much. I don't know what all you have in front of you, which pictures of the lot or the survey or anything like that, but my basic understanding when we bought the lot that the setbacks were 7.5 feet. And so we thought that's what we had to work with initially. Of course, we didn't really look into specifics, what we might do or anything like that, other than we did add a pool in 2015 under the 7.5 setback, and that side of the house, the pool, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
The side with the pool added is a 7.5 with respect to that side. So our thinking was for the garage area up front, to maintain what we initially had thought was the requirement. After looking into the space, of course you don't have the internal plans of the house or anything, but that back area kind of has a patio area there, and that's the area we're going to extend backward into a living area, which extends that room on that side so we can add a bathroom and make that into a master bedroom. Right now, it essentially only has 2 bedrooms. We use another room as a bedroom, but it doesn't have a closet, so I'm not sure you can call it bedroom. But, and other than that, the front area on that side of the house is now an attached garage. Of course, we were going to make that into living space and then attach the garage forward. So my feeling was that for the first variance in the front, the 7.5 would be consistent with what we knew at the time we purchased the house and planned on doing things to it. After we started looking at it, we come down and, we're there for 2 weeks living, and then we come down and work on and off. After living there and deciding how to adjust the living space, we have four kids and now 5 grandkids, and trying to figure out how to, make it so that more of them could come and stay with us at different points. To change the living space in the way I just described would accommodate what we feel would be acceptable for those purposes. It would require the back area. My understanding, we bought it like it was 7.5 feet, so we're asking for a 6-foot setback on that back corner, which would have been 1.5 feet smaller than what we originally thought we had, and that just has come out from looking at the plans and expanding the room. It does not block any pathways to the other house. There's a lot of room there. Now, on that side of the house does abut close to that, and it seems like their setback is less than 7.5 feet. I don't know what it is, but there's no walkway there. There's no access from the other house there, doors. It doesn't include anything. It doesn't include their view. They actually have a pool that actually almost goes out, to their dock. So I don't know how they got that variance, but anyway, it doesn't really affect the neighbors. And a point of interest, the prior owner actually had deeded, gosh, I've done that again. I'm not used to speaking into a mic, but anyway, the prior owner had actually allowed them to use some of the property, our property, to build a dock, and put a boat in, since they didn't have access, or a big enough area, I guess, to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So, I don't feel like they owe us anything, but I mean, I don't think they would,
Worked well together.
yeah, I don't think that they would be offended, or they're not here, objecting or anything, so I don't think they'd have a problem with that expansion on that back corner. So anyway, like I said to start with, our plan was to retire down here. I retired in March. We've had some family issues that made us put off, coming here to the meeting, but I'm here now, and hopefully we could get some kind of clarity on this so we can proceed. My wife's planning on retiring within the year, So, our plans are to look into doing something to the house so we could move down and retire here, so. Does anybody have any questions for me, or, the application has all those points written out, and I tried to relate it to what the code is and was and so on and so forth, but I'm just a lay person, so.
Yeah, I get it. Anybody have any questions for the owner of the property?
Well, just based on what Patrick said, I'm not sure how you would redesign or restructure. I couldn't make that clear in my head where you were talking about. But is that something that you would be willing to look at so that there wouldn't be quite as much variance, or have you looked at other
Yeah,
options?
I've looked at the space quite a bit, thinking about this since, I started thinking about applying once I found out the code had changed in 2019. Really, there's no space to expand the house on the other side, and it doesn't really work anyway because we have the pool there, and that's where the existing bedrooms are. So the only thing that makes sense is to use this space where, that I just talked about on the side of the house we're talking about. And there is the most room in the front there off the corner. The lot, as you look at it, is a pie shape. And the problem with the back is that it's less than 70 feet across at the back of the water side. The front has quite a bit more room, as you can see. So, that's why the request is different, and that's why, the thinking is to put a garage more forward there. But the back area, because it's a pie-shaped lot, is kind of narrower, and so that's why I asked for that variance in order to complete the footprint of the building, which was our idea, that they were to require that setback. Of course, I would consider anything. I haven't had an architect draw anything up yet. I have my own drawings and stuff, and we did have a builder there and talk about, the real implications of doing the project and such, but we haven't moved forward because, he said it's a waste of time until we resolve this issue. I guess if the board were to grandfather in the 7.5 for the garage, that would solve that problem. If they were to grandfather in 7.5 for the back corner, I was thinking, it could be extended, and then there could be an angled part, just like you see the pool is angled, to make the 7.5 setback acceptable for that project. I guess that could be done. Or the expansion could be a little shorter, so, the corner doesn't meet the 7.5. So there could be some design changes, but it would significantly affect the living space that we had in mind and limit, if we're going to put a full bathroom over there for a master bedroom. So I have thought about that, and those are my thoughts. So.
Anybody else have any questions or conversation?
Jane, I do. Patrick once said at a meeting that negotiating with applicants during a hearing, it never turns out well for them. And it was something like that. The whole 30% thing that Patrick was talking about is interesting, but it isn't what's here right now. Correct me if I'm wrong. Am I wrong on that? It's not really an option. The variance request is the variance request. Is that right?
Well,
That's correct,
it
actually.
is correct,
Okay.
but it's only.
So-
Well, again,
So-
so
Yeah, that's fine. That's
yeah, to clarify, while Patrick, Ms. Venice is correct in his analysis, that's not
Yes.
what's before you. What's
Correct.
before you is
So-
the specific development application and the variance application. If the property owner wants to withdraw his application and redo the design to get the benefit of the 30%, then that would be the process. Otherwise, theoretically, what's gonna happen is you're going to, let's say, grant or recommend granting the variance. The city council goes ahead and grants it, and then he goes back and redesigns, and we have a project that's not consistent with the variance that was granted.
Not a good idea. Thank you, John. So here would be my suggestion, just from a procedural point of view. If there's a, Jane, can you hear me?
Yes.
If there's a, if there appears to be an interest from the applicant's point of view, since he doesn't even have plans drawn up, we could table this to a date certain so that he doesn't have to go through the whole process again and allow him to come back with a new plan. But as the variance is before us right now, it's not our job as the LPA to create some legislative process to allow it. The project does not meet the criteria of a variance request. Whether it's just doesn't meet it. So if you all think that the gentleman would have plans done and come back with, Patrick's idea that of the 30% coverage and that might work, then let's table this to another date and not, or continue it. Maybe continue is probably the better word. I guess John would have to decide on that. Do you see what I'm saying? To negotiate, well, it's only 2 feet, well, it's this, well, it's that. He doesn't even have plans yet. We're going to come back with a project that is either overbuilt or for sure inconsistent with this, inconsistent with the project objectives. Did you follow me? Did I make sense of that?
Do you understand
May I-
what she's suggesting?
Yeah. May I comment? Basically, I was an engineering major, so, I've looked at the space and I know what our requirements are, or our wishes are because of the way it's laid out, it's a fairly small structure to begin with, as you can tell. I don't see, if we don't get the variances, I don't think there's any way to redesign it that would functionally fit what we'd like to have in the building. So I don't really feel like I'm interested in pursuing that kind of course. So I guess I have to live with the decision whether it's granted or not based on what's before us. I did talk to my wife about it, but if we can't remodel, I guess, just sell it.
Well, I don't think
Maybe
that
consider going somewhere else. I don't know. I mean, this has been a dream of ours. We love the area, but, we do have certain needs, for the living space that I don't feel are unreasonable. I do understand that you might see it differently.
I think the key thing
No,
is that you have to meet a certain criteria to get a
the
variance.
criteria is rigid, and that's, yeah.
We don't have the ability to change that criteria for your situation because it's reasonable. You have to meet the 5 criteria that are in the packet, and
Which page on the application would that be?
13,
page 13 of 122,
14.
the findings and conclusions, basically A through E. So basically, if you are interested or willing to go back and look at this and try to do the 30% rule, there is a possibility that you might be able to meet those or not, so that,
So basically, I didn't really understand that. I'm looking at the survey.
Yeah, let me explain that to you,
The original setback on the,
is 8.54.
yeah, 8.54 back at that left corner.
So,
So I guess there was something else in the LDC code about respecting historical.
Yeah, but that doesn't qualify.
I don't know if that's current or the old one. I've looked at it so much, and I'm not a lawyer or anything, so,
Patrick, can you explain to him make that vision a little clearer for him?
So the way let me find the
So
section.
you're adding 17 and 8.5 together and taking 30% of that?
No, you're looking at, it's either 15% on each side as a setback, and staff came up with 13 feet on each side. If
How
you'd
much?
like. 13 feet? Or you can combine and have a fraction of that total number and have staggered setbacks, no less than 7.5 to one side and the rest on the other side. So I did the math. In this case, it would mean that on one side, you have 17.86. So on the other side, your minimum setback would be 8.14. So if
Says
you,
it on my survey, it's 8.5.
5.4, but with your extension, you would have to maintain that extension at 8.14, and you would meet code requirement. Or if you went a little less than 8.14, your variance, instead of being a variance of 10 feet or whatever, becomes a variance of a foot, foot and a half, 2 feet. You decide.
So
But
if you have
the-
the ability, excuse me for interrupting, but if you have the ability to approve that variance,
No,
then you have the ability to approve the variance that's before you?
No.
The request,
well, yes, that is accurate. We could approve this variance, but it doesn't meet the criteria. So, sir, with all due respect to you, I know this is difficult, and like you said, you're a layperson, but I would make a motion to deny this variance. Deny it, in which case now you go to the town council with a denial. But what Patrick has brought to the table is, in my opinion, a good option for you that we should not really negotiate with you. But if instead we say, yes, sure, but if instead, if instead we said, sir, we're going to continue this hearing until November 1st, our first meeting in November, whatever date, or don't even put a date attached to it. It gives you an opportunity to go to your architect, to go to your people and say, look, maybe we have another option here.
So you're saying, correct me if I'm wrong, because I don't want to walk away with misunderstanding, that under the guidance that you're looking at, that would give an 8.1 foot setback?
setback, and your variance would be based on that. So either you could meet that 8.14, or you can ask for variance, but instead of asking a variance from the 13 foot that's required, your request would be different. You would be asking a variance from
that-
the 8.14.
That may be doable. What, does that include more fees? Because I mean, they're not cheap.
I think it,
It saves you a lot if you do the extension as opposed to getting denied and then starting over.
Okay.
That's right.
if you ask for
So
a
this is-
continuance, you can go back to staff, present something,
Correct.
they may have comments, and then they're gonna reschedule you to come back to us.
Okay, so would I just amend this application?
Yes.
Instead of submitting a whole new one, so there'd just be certain pages, I would
Yes.
resubmit to whom?
You would work with the staff to come up with that plan.
Staff, what staff?
Jason.
Which is,
His name is
excuse
Jason.
me.
His name is Jason.
You would work with your architect and our planners to come up with your final plan and then come back in and see us.
Well, I guess I have no other option. That's certainly more reasonable than an outright denial. I mean, my
Way cheaper.
wife's not here, obviously, so I can't speak for her. I mean,
It's way cheaper too.
yeah, I mean, you're right, that's much more reasonable than, I mean, she said basically, that she was gonna recommend denying it otherwise, so I guess that gives.
Well, that doesn't mean they would agree with me, but still, I'm just saying, Patrick's opened an interesting door for you.
Okay, so what we'd like to do is continue this to a date certain, and what date would that?
And I think you have to open the public hearing even though it's not.
Well, if you can open it up to public hearing and then, close it and then continue it, you'd still have to, in my opinion, the better part of abundance of caution is reopen the public hearing when it comes back to you, just in case. As far as what date, obviously we meet once a month. I think that, I don't want to speak for the applicant as to whether or not he would be in a position to come back and have, something resubmitted in 30 days or 60 days. So I think it's really a question of the applicant as to when does he feel comfortable.
Leave it open. Leave it open. You don't have to.
If
You have
it,
to have a
if,
date certain.
hold on, if you leave it open, then the applicant's gonna have to incur the cost of re-advertising and
Okay.
renoticing.
So the choice is September 13th or October 11th,
Or November.
or November 8th.
I think we should get Jason's input of how,
Yes.
what his schedule is and what his bandwidth is
Okay.
to facilitate.
Thank you, I appreciate that. So Jason Smalley, Planning and Zoning. My understanding is September is going to be a very already blocked up
Difficult,
meeting.
okay.
So I would recommend, if the intention is to continue, that either October or November would be a bit easier at this point to squeeze them into.
You have to get with your person and get all this planning done before.
Well, we don't have an architect. I mean, that increases
Well-
cost significantly. I mean,
It might help you get the job done, is
Yeah,
what
I
we're
know.
saying.
I mean, I wouldn't even know how to present that because really, the structures, I mean, the changes I've made really are not architectural per se. They're just more of a rough design requirements, and the spacing is the issue, not
Well, we-
necessarily that there can be much creativity
I can
in.
make,
Yes, help me any way you can. I'm floundering
Let me
here.
just say, I was gonna, I'll let Mr. Van Ness speak first, and then I'll add if he doesn't cover what I think he's gonna cover.
without necessarily needing an architect, you can look at stair-stepping the edge of your
Right,
building,
Sure.
meet the
Or
requirement.
Or having it angled.
an angle. And what I would recommend is that you go back to the code and you look at the criteria that we have to abide by to approve this and recommend
I
approval.
thought I did address
And,
that.
and if you address one by one and provide a justification why we meet that requirement, or why this is reasonable, or why this is the minimum variance from code to have a viable extension, then you make it a lot easier for this group to support your petition.
I'm looking at,
And the thing is, I don't think we should debate it back and forth.
oh, I'm not.
And I think, as Anita mentioned, having these discussions on the dais when that's not part of the application is never beneficial to the town nor to the applicant usually. We make rash decisions, and a lot of times we miss things. So the recommendation is actually asking for a continuance, coming back, having everything on paper, and then we can look at that application at that time.
I understand the applicant's reluctance to engage an architect or engineer to assist them at this point in time because of the cost. However, I would, if it were me, okay, and I want to make it very clear that, my job here is to assist you all, but, if the property owner doesn't even know what can be done with the structure physically, because an architect or an engineer hasn't looked at it and is considering, well, this is the envelope I would like, can that even be done from a construction standpoint? And until that question is answered, again, we're back in the scenario where we're granting a variance to potential changes to the structure that can't or can be done from a physical standpoint, from a construction standpoint. And so I think, we're putting the cart before the horse. As a general rule, there are certainly exceptions. I think that staff will tell you that it is easier to process an application for a variance to submit when the construction plans are part of the design, that there's, very specific drawings that show where it is, particularly now that we're talking about a mix of that 30% of where the setbacks could be, more, one on this side, more on that side. And really, we're starting to get into a significant amount of detail that in my opinion, the applicant would be best served by consulting with some qualified experts. And we can't do that. We're staff. That's not, that, we can't give advice to the applicant. The applicant does have the responsibility to submit a complete application that allows you all to make a decision, and that is supported by the applicant's justification, as Mr. Van Essen mentioned.
Okay,
Jane,
yes.
Jane, I think what Patrick and John are saying is correct, and not to belabor this, I think that it's the applicant's lucky day, and we move to continue this until the hearing in November.
Agreed.
And get,
I would recommend November as well.
Okay,
Give them some time.
wait just a second.
Saying what he said, though.
Okay, one last comment, please.
Can you talk in the microphone, please?
Oh, sorry. Basically, I consulted 2 contractors before this, so the question of what's possible has been answered to my satisfaction. One was, I think it's John Jones, and the other one was Mr. Neese, who actually lives in the neighborhood. Both of them have reviewed the structure, and the changes that I had proposed are very doable, and they saw it as a way even meeting the amounts you can invest based on the quality or the property values, and a way forward to do those things.
but sir, with all due respect, it's irrelevant to us until we see it on paper,
Yeah.
until there's some sign off and we see, here's the box I'm gonna
He
build.
said that,
So-
excuse me, he said that he wouldn't even involve an architect until the variance question
Well,
was
but
answered.
Steve,
So
where-
now I'm at catch-22.
Well, and see where he has gotten you. I'm sorry, excuse me.
Yeah.
He has not, his advice has not got you past go. So at this point,
We're treading bad water
we need
here.
to stop and step back. Do I need to do the open?
Yeah, let's open the public hearing, just in case there's someone in the
Okay.
audience who wishes to speak.
So is there anybody in the audience who would like to speak? Come on up. So, sir, if you could just sit down for a minute, let him speak at your location.
Oh, certainly.
Sure. If you would give your name and address, please, for the record.
Scott DePaul, 5175 Williams Drive, next door to Mark on the south side. I just came today to make sure that any construction was going to take place on the north side, which is the left side, is what you are debating today. I know Patrick did a lot of figuring here to help him out come up with a different plan. I'd be strongly against any construction on the south side of his building, which would be the right side. We've got 2 bedrooms on that side. It's already extremely too loud when the house is rented out, which is most of the year. And we just wanted to make sure that the pool is already had a variance, which is closer to our property line, right outside our master bedroom window. So that's a big concern for us. We don't want to pop anybody's bubble, and we want to have everybody make the greatest house they can. But that south side is,
So you're on the pool side of the
Yes.
property? Well, there isn't any new construction requested, so that's good news for you.
well, I guess with the new plan, there possibly could be if they kick that wall out a little bit.
No, they wouldn't be doing anything on that side.
I'm gonna,
That footage,
I'm gonna object.
Okay.
so the way Patrick explained
We
it,
can't, we're,
I'm gonna object. You really can't cross back and forth with public comment in a hearing.
And I was just bringing it up because Patrick had brought it up. I was just here to make sure, maybe save him a step in the future, that I will be back again to make sure
thank you,
that doesn't happen, that's all.
thank you. Anybody else that would like to speak? Okay, we'll close public comment. and bring it back to the dais. So would anybody like to make a motion to extend this?
I'll make a motion, Jane, to continue the hearing until the meeting, our meeting in November.
Can we open this up for discussion, though, before we make the motion and close this?
Well, the process would be someone would second for discussion purposes. And
discuss.
then you all could discuss it before voting on it.
I'll second it for discussion purposes.
Okay, all those in favor?
No, no, no.
No,
Wait, we
let
have-
Patrick
sorry, we have
discuss.
discussion. Okay, go ahead, Patrick.
I think this is a good time to have this discussion. When these amendments, LDC amendments came to us for change in setbacks, we made a certain recommendation. And I think we were all somewhat surprised that the council went a different direction. Part of me believes that there were unintended consequences, and now we've had a few examples that demonstrate that maybe the intent that we started with and what we wound up with when we deal with a pie-shaped lot or irregular lot, that we're having to go through these hoops and we're having impacts on homeowners that weren't intended. Again, I think the intent when we started was very large lots and very large homes. By no means is this a McMansion. It's a modest home. It's someone that bought the home prior to the LDC changes. We also caution council that there should be some kind of vesting or grandfathering or at least a discussion on all these nonconformities that we're creating. So, you know, everybody should understand that this home is now non-conforming. Not just whatever they want to add. The house itself does not meet current setbacks. So it's a non-conforming home. We didn't put any provisions in there to protect that. So I'm bringing that up because we have a case that's a perfect example of were we to be at 7.5 feet, I think the applicant would not require this variance. The only caveat is maybe the 10-foot setback applies because it's on a canal, but again, don't know when that came in. So I would say that, you know, we have to consider that. I don't know what the right process is, and we can ask Mr. Herron. Do we have to bring back the issue as a separate LPA item for another agenda if we want to make a recommendation to the council to reconsider or to look at this issue once again, maybe consider amending the code once again?
If it is desire of the LPA to have that discussion, to make a recommendation to the town council, then I would suggest that you direct staff to put it on the next agenda as a discussion item, or in the whatever meeting you all feel comfortable with, based upon the staff's comments about workload, and have that discussion and make a and ask that then staff forward that recommendation to the town council for its consideration.
So should we do that at the end of the meeting? Have a,
Yeah, you put on as a discussion item on the next agenda.
and then ask for staff to come back? Okay.
Agree.
That was my soapbox here for a second.
I totally agree.
It's a good point, Patrick, and it's a really good point. Yeah.
Okay, so back to this. We have a motion on the table and seconded. Any other discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so that will be to a date certain of November 8th
9 a.m.
at 9 a.m. So when you'll come back, you'll have a little bit more time to get with somebody and come back a little more prepared. Thank you. Okay, next we have,
Hey, Jane, can I just ask one question?
yes, Anita?
Maybe Patrick will be the person who will know this most clearly, but you all have looked at, tons of these applications, and I've looked at tons of them too. Without having a plan, architect, no architect, engineer, no engineer, without having a plan in front of us to say, here's the box I'm going to build, I find this application incomplete.
Well, it does have a box.
It has a box, yes,
If it were accepted, he would have to build within the box, so
within that box. Okay, so you're comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with the box.
I'm comfortable with that too.
Okay.
You too, Patrick? And Karen and Scott?
And I think,
Okay.
you know, from my,
Yes, I
from my
am.
standpoint, being in the industry is, a lot of cost is involved with hiring an architect. And I
Sure.
think even the lay person, if they want to bypass hiring an engineering firm or a planner,
Yep.
can figure some of this stuff out. And again, if they look at the rules and regulations and they put in a request that's consistent with that, they can kind of outline what that box is gonna be.
Yeah. Okay,
Okay.
okay, thank you.
We aren't really supposed to readdress you because we've already closed the meeting on your thing. You can stay for public comment, but that is at the end of the meeting. Or you can give us, anybody a call. Jason,
You can talk to those folks right there next to you.
okay.
Jason.
Jason is probably who you need to call. Okay, moving along. We are at the comprehensive plan amendment to adopt a property rights element. Okay,
Good morning.
morning.
Sarah Probst with Community Development.
Hi, Sarah.
Hello, Anita. How are you doing?
Oh, phenomenal.
This morning you have before you the property rights element of the comprehensive plan. During the 2021 Florida legislative session, SB 59 was passed. This requires every municipality to adopt a property rights element. The language before you reflects the language of the law. Staff recommends the LPA recommend approval of the property rights element to Town Council. I'm available for any questions you have.
I had one quick question. In the staff report, talks about the timing of this coming forward because there's a small-scale amendment being reviewed.
Yes.
Is it just because state regulations say that it's got to be adopted in or before the next amendment? Or does it have any repercussions on what is being requested from that other amendment in any way?
It is only because the law requires that either this be adopted before X date, or if it's after X date, I think it's July 1st, 2021, then no other changes can be made to the comprehensive land use plan. So this has to be adopted before we can process that.
And my understanding in talking to my peers in other jurisdictions that, you know, all of a sudden DO has said no. So we do have to do this in order to be able to process any other future amendments to the comprehensive plan.
So, can you tell me what, if any of this is totally different from something we have now, or it's just?
It is a completely new element. It's required by this new state law. The state law pretty much requires exactly this language. It can be modified. Thousand Friends of Florida have offered a few model codes. There are a few model codes out there, but this is the most basic language that gets us to where we are in compliance with the state, and we're not trying to do anything different than exactly what the state asked to do.
So, and when you say basic, is this the most least intrusive to the public and to what we have now?
Essentially, yeah. This is requiring exactly the thing that SB 59 said was required.
Okay. Anybody have any questions or discussions on this?
That was my question.
Okay. Anything else? No. So do we need to vote on this to send it forward?
You need to vote on, and with the recommendation or approval or denial to the town council.
Anybody?
I can make a motion to approve.
Okay, motion by Patrick,
Second.
second by Scott. All those in favor?
Aye.
Hi.
Moving along, Newton Park CPD amendment. Who's presenting this? Back again. Quick trip to the seat.
Good morning. Sarah Probst with Community Development, again.
Yes?
The Parks and Recreation Department is requesting an amendment to the existing CPD for Newton Park. Condition number 7 of the existing resolution is what it is currently, allows consumption of alcohol on premise only with a temporary permit or through a membership organization that has a permit. Newton Park would like the opportunity to serve alcohol not associated with a special permit. This request is in line with the changes at the Mound House and consistent with Town Council's operational direction. We have received letters of objections from 2 adjacent property owners regarding this issue. Staff is recommending that the LPA recommend approval to this request to modify the existing CPD, which will become an ordinance at this time. I'm available for any
Did
questions.
we,
But before we move on, and let's make sure that Sarah has finished her staff report, because this is a rezoning, and I apologize for not, and so and she's been sworn in. Technically, it's a quasi-judicial matter, so you need to disclose any ex parte communications you may have had before we proceed.
I didn't stand and swear.
Oh.
I thought it was just for I apologize.
Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes, I do. All right. The witness has been sworn in. Before you ask her any questions, it would be appropriate to disclose any ex parte communications.
None for me.
I've had none.
nothing from me?
I walk by there just about every day.
Anita?
None.
Sorry about that.
Okay, thank you.
Can you give us a kind of a summary of what those objections are?
Oh, we didn't get these letters.
Yeah, we did. They're in there.
Yeah, they're in the packet.
They're in the packet.
So one is from 100 Gulfview Avenue. The other one is from 4560 Estero, Unit 403. Both of them have concerns regarding drunkenness on the beach generally, and maybe a potential increase. There's a concern that some of the signs on the beach indicate no alcohol, and their concern is, why would the park be different?
Well,
And those are just what we received.
the request is for at Newton on their property, not out on the beach, correct?
Yes.
Correct.
And would the park still be regulating the use and the potential for people to drink on the property? So my understanding is this is requested, so there's no need to come before council every time there's a special event.
Right.
That's correct.
And it would still be events related, but they wouldn't have to come in for a separate application every time. So my understanding is this wouldn't allow free-for-all that anybody that's on the park property can drink. Is that correct?
Well,
I wouldn't characterize it as free-for-all. I think that the point is that there are certain events based upon the size of the event that are approved administratively versus those that have to come before the city council. And this would allow for some of those events to take place without, because previously it had to be with a special event permit approval. And so it just gives, alcohol is allowed already on the property. It does take place. And so all this would do is to remove that specific requirement and standardize the language in all of the city-owned property CPDs.
Okay.
It's consistent. Sarah, is this not consistent with what we did with the Mound House a couple of years ago or whenever that was? We made that change with the Mound House, same.
Yes, that is,
And the same objections were raised, the same type of objection was raised, but it's all managed by, by us and the director of those properties, and there just hasn't been a problem.
And I understand the fact that we're talking about the Mound House and consistency, but that is not germane to this case, okay?
No, sorry about that. You're right.
To be very clear that it's not because it was approved somewhere else that we're gonna.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah,
We have to look at.
you're absolutely right, Patrick.
well, and my understanding, and when I read these letters, we're talking about permitted alcohol at events. We are not talking about sales of alcohol at Newton Park. And both of these letters indicate sales of liquor, which is not what we're doing. It's strictly permitting for an event
And I don't think that that information was necessarily sent out. Everybody received their postcard letting them know that this was happening, and the specific details of the case are not sent out in that. So it would have been up to the person who was concerned to read through the documents and figure out what was going on. So they may not have been aware that that was the case, that it was still going to be associated with events.
Okay.
In fact,
But I can't speak for what they do know.
in
or
fact,
don't.
our agency and the town council, you know, part of the reason we denied Publix was because it was so close to the park. At least that was some of the thoughts of some of the members. I'd like to address these two people's letters. This is a policing issue. This is a lack of us not having enough community policing to take care of things like this. I deal with this every day down at my hotel and the properties I manage. There just are not enough folks to go around to enforce this. So this really has nothing to do with the CPD, but this is a policing issue. And the entire community is getting fed up with this. And I walk my dog by here 5 times a week, and I gotta agree with them. You know, there's homeless people sleeping there. I pick up beer cans every day in front of this place. But I don't think this has anything to do with this request here.
Right.
Right, I agree. I totally agree.
Any other comments? Okay,
Public hearing.
open the public hearing, and the public says no. Close public hearing, and we're back here for a motion.
I'll make the motion to approve the use of alcohol under a permit for events at
Do it with the,
park. What am I saying here? I gotta do it with all that. Hold on.
The rezoning request.
It's to amend,
request to
I believe,
amend the
condition
CPD.
7.
You wanna go ahead and do it? You know all the wording. I'll second. Oh, you don't want to? Okay.
I'd have to go back and look
I
here.
have to go back and look for exact, what page is that, Jane?
49, you can just address the request under applications. Modify the condition number 7,
Yeah.
right here. Just the request.
Okay, I want to set in motion to approve and modify condition number 7 to allow the park to be operated similar to the changes made in recent years to the Mound House and consistent with the town council operational directions.
Okay, thank you. Second,
I second.
by Scott. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Okay, passes unanimously. Moving forward. Okay, we are at historical preservation. 171 Egret. Go ahead, Jason.
Jason Smalley, Planning and Zoning, thank you. So we had received some number of applications, including this one at 171 Egret for historical designation. The application package, as you see before you, is what we have received. I believe staff is looking for a little bit of guidance about how the LPA would like to receive these going forward. But we brought the application as is to you and provided you a bit of research that we were able to do on our end. So just to establish what we have here at 171 Egret, this is an original build of 1962. We were notified through the package, as you were, that there was some number of renovations or permits that were pulled. We couldn't establish the scope of work on those. So all we can do is take a look at what the structure looks like today, as subjective as that might be, and then offer you what the applicant has given you in their package.
Jason, in my package, I have this that is not legible. Is everybody else's not legible?
It wasn't legible.
There's a second page that should have been in there.
Yeah, page 117 of the packet.
117 of the packet is just not legible at all.
And if you would like, I'd be more than happy to just run off a few copies real quick. Really, it's just a general explanation of what was known about the house. The architect is unknown, the builder is unknown. It is a block home with jalousie windows. It's very basic, sort of existing architectural bits and bobs that are known about the home. But I apologize if that wasn't.
Page 117, I think you're on 118.
So there's, I do see what you're saying, the back of the page is unreadable here. I believe that was some bleed through from
Okay,
the,
okay.
from the applicant's copy. But we do have another page that actually is legible and has,
We have that one works, we have that.
excellent.
Okay. All right, so basically, we are to, so I assume you found that this property meets the criteria for designation? It's a designation, right? Not the,
Correct, not recognition.
not recognition. Okay, request historical recognition, yeah, it is.
Well, the applicant came in as a the application used was the recognition application, but it's actually for designation. They're not asking to be placed on a official register with the
Okay.
state or the
So
feds.
Historical recognition is what they're requesting?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, so we feel that it meets the criteria?
So staff had made a determination that based on the package, we couldn't establish whether or not it met the requirements of being of such, local, or it being such a special designation or a special, there's some sort of special feature to this. We had hoped that the applicant would come in and provide a little bit more detail about why they believe that this is something that is particular to the community, either from an architectural or historical standpoint. But based on the application that we received, we don't have enough to say that it meets the requirements of the code.
So you reached out to these people and they have not responded yet?
We offered them the opportunity to go ahead and either supplement their application or to come down and be here for any questions that you may have, and we did not get an affirmative on either of those.
Okay, that's kind of surprising.
Jane,
Yeah, it's Roxanne's house.
Yeah, I know. That's why I'm saying it's kind of surprising that,
just a question for,
Sure.
maybe you and Scott know this, but do we have at this point, do we have a historical review subcommittee or not? And would they be the ones determining if this meets the criteria before it comes to?
Typically, yes, but what's the status?
I was,
I thought we-
I was wondering that,
I
I
thought
was
we had
wondering the
enough
same
people.
thing, which is, our code says that we are supposed to have, or our resolution, that we're supposed to have an advisory committee.
Yes.
Right.
I think, and then of which at least one member of this board has to be a member of that advisory committee.
Correct.
And as I understand, the process is the advisory committee is supposed to vet these initially and then make a recommendation to the LPA. And again, we haven't had the advisory committee in some time, but I'm going frankly off of memory.
Right, so I'm
You used to be on it, so you.
right, so one of the requirements for CH2 designation is that the house is at least 50 years old.
but this is recognition, not designation.
I'm talking recognition.
Oh,
Recognition
you
as
said
well.
designation,
No, I'm sorry. CH2 is recognition.
Okay,
So one is designation.
Okay.
I think there's only 2 properties on the island. One's the
these,
Heavenly Biscuit, and is the other one Mound House?
I think it's the yeah, I think it's Mount House.
I think those are the only 2 that have historical designation. If memory serves me right. But there are quite a number of houses that have the second recognition. And really, the only requirement is that the home is at least 50 years old. So,
Okay.
now if you're going for designation, yeah, you've got to have that's the Mount House, right? I mean,
Right.
that's the most historic home on the island, so
So have we clarified that this is designation?
no,
no, it's recognition.
it's recognition.
It's right on there, historical recognition on 115.
So,
I guess if it's more than 50 years old,
yeah,
it's met the criteria. Okay.
that's, well, the way it's written now is that's one
The
of the,
only requirement?
right.
Okay. the question being, do we want to go ahead and address these two properties without the Historical Preservation Board's recommendation? Or do we want to send it back to the Historical Preservation Board to have them address them and move it forward?
I would, it would be my recommendation that you table these two items.
Yep.
So we as staff can make sure what that process is, because what we've described is my understanding, is that there has to be, in other words, there must be a historic preservation committee.
Okay,
And that committee must look at these, make a recommendation, and then that's what comes before you. So staff bringing them forward, while I understand the desire of the people who may have submitted the applications to get this done, it does, we've got to follow the process.
I agree. Okay, well, if I recall, Scott, before we went on recess, you requested a meeting to be put together, and those people who are
Yeah, I
attached.
offered to help. I think we decided that Forrest was going to be.
Yeah, I thought we designated.
And then I offered up, I made some recommendations, you know, that maybe not meet every month, that,
Right.
you know, and that third, whatever day they had, the third or fourth Wednesday was always tough because it always bumps into Thanksgiving and Christmas, and I think if we
I
could find
believe the
a day, but,
requirements are 4 times a year,
yeah.
if I recall right from serving.
But I had thought that Forrest was gonna organize a meeting. I offered to come to the first one to offer some guidance and just,
Okay, let's ask that the town put it on a calendar and call a meeting so that we can move forward with that.
Jason.
Or we could have it attached to this meeting for next month at the end of the meeting? No? Okay.
Well, I don't,
Yeah, we don't know their timeframe, but
we don't know what the.
Yeah.
I think we
I
just
mean,
remand it back to them, and then it'll come back to us.
Again,
We have, they have to have the room space and
Right.
staff space.
now
and
that
everything.
we've identified the member of this board who is going to be essentially the liaison between this board and the committee, I think the process was that the staff was then going to start looking and putting out applications for people to be part of the Historic Preservation Committee. And that's where I'm not sure where we stand.
Well, I did get a call from a person who believes they are on this Historical Preservation Board and was surprised to see it on our agenda since they hadn't had a meeting. But I think there are people that are currently involved in it.
Let's find out.
Okay, let's do that. Okay, so is there a motion to table both of these applications? So moved, okay?
Before the vote, if I may, just for clarification purposes, what would you like staff to bring forward or to help coordinate, or are we going to be
We-
contacted by Forrest or somebody else?
I think that possibly the town needs to come up with a date, let Forrest know when it's available. Forrest needs to have whatever manual or whatever the town has on that so that they can be able to look at things that come into them to,
Can I give Forrest what I have, or do I have to give it to you guys to then give to him?
I would recommend that you give it to us for us.
That's what I thought, okay.
we probably need a duplicate of it anyway.
Yeah,
Okay, so any other questions on that?
I will do that.
Thank
Okay,
you very
we-
much, I
You
appreciate
sure?
it.
We have a
I'll try to get that
motion
to you by the end of the week.
and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that's that. Administrative agenda.
Hey, Jane,
Yes,
my apologies, everyone, but I have got to go now.
I understand. It's 2 o'clock or something there?
Is it
2 a.m.?
No, it's 20 after 4.
Oh, it's
Oh, 20 after more. Thank you for staying up and coming to our meeting today, Anita.
Honey, it's 20 after 4 in the afternoon.
Oh, sorry. Oh,
Well, no, good.
tell time. Okay. Sorry. No, okay, so
Thank you guys very much.
we don't need any other votes. We're good anyway. Okay.
Thank you.
Going to the church or the one bar?
Both.
I'll let you know later. Probably both, Scott.
Okay, have fun.
See you guys. Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay, administrative agenda. And no administration here. LPA members' items and reports. This would be the time for you to bring that up, Patrick?
Yep. So just reiterating what I was saying earlier before on the setback changes. I'd like to make a motion that we request staff to go back and bring the item forward to council to revisit the setback issue, and staff to examine the issue and where there's been conflicts, and perhaps go back to the original intent to address large lots, view corridors along the beach, and very large homes. And how, in application, how it's maybe creating unintended consequences. And maybe bring some suggestions forward that can go to the board for review,
Okay,
council.
second, do we have to,
Yeah, I would only make one comment or observation and see whether or not, I know that staff worked long and hard and putting together the ultimately what ended up being codified and adopted. And I know that it was, as the LPA has characterized that it morphed, it changed in between the LPA recommendation and ultimately what the town council adopted. May I suggest that, and because the primary author of that, or person who was engaged in that process, Sarah, is here, and I don't know whether or not it might be of benefit to this body to, at the next LPA meeting or whenever you all feel, is to hear how ultimately that got to what it was that the town council adopted. Because I think that to all of your concerns, I think that there's always the possibility of unintended consequences with any regulation, whether it's land development or just a regular ordinance. And ultimately, the percentage concept was deemed to be a compromise to some degree to provide some of that flexibility that was being discussed in during the variance application that got continued, which is, hey, you can average it out and maybe move it a little bit more over here versus over there. And I think part of the not the problem, but the implementation is people have to get used to that and think of it not just in the context of, well, it's 8.5 feet here and it's 8.5 feet here and it's 10.5 feet here and it's 25 feet. It's intended to provide some flexibility, and also to take into account, because there were a number of different issues that were being discussed during that time frame. Some of them, you all may recall, were well, if you put the equipment, the pool, the air conditioning, the mechanical equipment over here, then maybe you shift and you use those percentages to move the house over a little bit to give relief from the house next door to where that equipment is. And if you stick with just the numbers, you can't do that. You're always going to be ending up with a variance. Well, we need a variance because we're concerned about our neighbors over here, whereas the percentage allows you to do that averaging, so to speak. So, there's I think that was one of actually one of the significant considerations, but That's my recollection. I'm not the one who did the research. I'm not the one who made the
How would we
reports.
do that? Would we do that more of a workshop format with Sarah, where she comes to us, we discuss it as a group, maybe?
Well, I mean,
leaves with-
you know, I'm just trying to be, maybe a little more goal-oriented. I understand what you would like us to do, but, you know, the town council is like, well, what specifically would they like us to look at?
Well, I think the shock for us mainly was it was presented to us as double lots and large lots over 75 feet. And then it came back to
Originally, yeah, 8,
all,
All lots.
all lots. And that was like, whoa, that was never even discussed. That was not what we heard or passed forward.
Well,
And for it to,
I'd have to go back and look, but I think that was put before you,
No,
okay, because they were adopted as two separate ordinances, if I recall. But that's
Council
why,
just struck through. It was presented to them.
Yeah, actually, that change happened between the first and the second hearing with council. So that was kind of, it came, I think it went to the M&P, and then it came to LPA, and then, it went back and forth several times. What you guys passed forward at that first hearing, council made some changes, and that was one of the changes that they made, to apply it to all lots, the 15%. It had been lots over a specific
Right.
width. So that change was between the first and the second hearing.
I think that's more than anything our concern.
that's
because
the
it is
biggest concern
affecting-
of all.
It's affecting small lots, which we went over and over, that this would not be good if it was on small lots, because we have so many 50-foot lots. You take 15%, and you're in real trouble with a 50-foot lot.
And the other thing also, and Sarah, you weren't there, I think at the last meeting, what we asked staff is, as we're going through these comp plan amendment changes and maybe some subsequent LDC changes, to look at maybe an administrative review or variance or deviation process where we could put in tolerances. So in some instances, if someone's asking for just a foot variance, staff could just check off the box and say it's within that tolerance, and we don't have to go through a public hearing process. So, that's another thing that could be maybe combined with that of asking council to go back and reconsider what's been changed, but also look at maybe an administrative process to relieve that.
So when could we do that? Can we address that at the next meeting? Because, like, for instance, the case we had before us would be affected, and
Well, I would imagine it would take time for
I know.
staff to do that, and they're gonna have to set stuff aside, so,
that's why I'm just asking when,
yeah.
so we don't get pushed off to next year.
no.
I thought Jason said we have I thought Jason said we have a pretty big
It is
September.
it's budget month.
Okay, yeah.
And I don't know if you guys,
September.
yeah, so budget month is usually very booked, but we could look at October.
Let's put it as a priority for October.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Karen, oh, sorry, you weren't done.
I
Go ahead.
guess I'm just the owner today.
That's all right.
So, another item, and I guess this is for the city attorney. I think you said something about, when people bring a petition to us, or they bring it to staff, we have to evaluate what they bring to us, or staff has to evaluate that. I don't know if that's, I'm asking for a little guidance of, is that what staff has to do? Or I've been in jurisdictions, and my point is, staff is very busy. And a lot of times, it seems like we're seeing cases where there might be an alternative, and I don't know if it's always discussed. And I know in some jurisdictions, the original stance, instead of saying the code says no, it's, let's see how we can get to yes.
Yes, that would be a lovely,
Yeah,
And if maybe we need more staff. But that, to me, that's important that we have that discussion, because the budget hearings are coming shortly. And we're gonna have to make decisions as to where we spend money. And if we can offer a better service and give staff a little more time to explore alternatives, to me, that maybe is
Saves a lot of
money
time.
better spent than some other things.
I can speak for myself, and only for myself, as the town attorney, that, it's my experience in working with staff, as well as with the applicants, that, for the most part, staff is very willing to sit down and spend time with an applicant to look at different issues. To some degree, what ultimately gets to you all, depends upon things like the level of sophistication of the applicant. Have they engaged professionals? Have they not engaged professionals? I don't, the gentleman's not here, but when he was here and he was talking, he indicated, at least I heard, that this is really what we want. I kind of did the math, and this is what we think works. We do that with the applicants beforehand, and I know there have been more than one occasion where staff has recommended or suggested, hey, maybe if you do this versus that, then it works, and in some instances, doing away completely with the need to ultimately come before the LPA or before the town council on certain items. So, staff does do that. I can't speak to the issue of staffing. It's outside my as they say, my wheelhouse. I would defer to staff. But I do think that overall, staff does try to work with property owners as best they can to come up with solutions to issues. And in some instances, items come to you all, because the applicant says, no, this is the way I want it to be. And, at that point in time, staff then just generates the staff report.
It would be nice to know that, though, that those discussions took place, if there's anywhere that can be noted, or.
Sure. Certainly I think during the staff presentation on their part, they, can talk, or for that matter, sometimes the applicants are, more forthcoming with that information as well. It's a two-way street. I think that certainly all of you have the ability and the authority to ask staff as well as the applicant, well, did you all sit down and discuss these issues? And it is watching the sausage being made, and try not to do that. But I think that today's conversation and the context of what was before you this morning was a bit of a function of not having those professionals that might have helped, crystallize and solidify exactly what it was the applicant was asking. I'm telling you my own personal experiences, but staff is here and they can certainly give their comments. But it's been my experience that as a general rule, staff tries to work with applicants before they get to any public hearing process, and that's across the board.
Okay, based on that, let's ask Jason, did you see that idea that Patrick came up with and go over that with them, or?
I would be interested to see how that's feasible, since we're talking about an addition of a home, of how we would go ahead and flex 20% on one side, 10% on another side, for instance, on an already existing structure. I'd be interested to see how you're making your measurements, and how you would sort of justify saying if the pool or the existing home is already 7.5 foot off, how we could go ahead and flex a larger portion to one side.
Jason, the idea is not to discuss this specific case.
Indeed, indeed.
And I think we want to stay away from that. It's not specific to any case or any staff member. I just think that I get approached by a lot of local residents. And, you know, the general feel, and sometimes I push back because I've seen it the other way of, well, you sure your contractor is doing the right thing also? Because it's a great way to delay your project to just say staff hasn't issued a permit when they haven't even made the effort. But sometimes the feel is that, you know, town hall is starting with a no. And if there's any way where you guys can help us and we can soften that, where the attitude becomes, when I walk in there, they want to work with me and get to yes, I think that would be a great change in perspective and attitude if we can do that. And that's all I'm saying. I'm not here to point a
No,
finger at anybody
not at
or
all.
anything in particular.
Right.
But to that point, if I might, I think that a case that you heard last month is actually a very good example of that back and forth between staff.
Right.
And that was the Shinosky case, where, you know, they had a vision of what they wanted the house to be versus what the code says it should be. And there was a lot of back and forth, and ultimately, much of which then got incorporated into the LPA's comments and recommendations, and it's still evolving, by the way, because the matter was that particular public hearing, and so I don't want to get into too many specifics. It was continued to see whether or not, if you do this, now we're down to really just one variance that you need in overall, and you know, it's may not be exactly what you wanted, and it's not exactly what the code says it should be, but that's kind of what I would give that as an example of the back and forth that you're talking about that has taken place since the beginning, because I know that that's an application that's been going back and forth between the applicant and staff for months. So, and sometimes it's a function, that's part of the function, that's part of the process. When you hear, well, it's coming to you after it's already been in the queue for 3 or 4 months, because staff is trying to work with the property owner or the applicant to resolve some of those issues and narrow them down, so when they do get to you and then to the town council, hopefully there's again crystallization of what the issues are, what needs to be addressed, and I do think that that's a really good example of how that works, and may not doesn't look that way necessarily to the eyes of the general public, who aren't here inside these walls, watching the sausage being made.
Anything else, Patrick? Two very good ideas. Thank you. I love the yes mode.
I do too.
Karen?
The only thing, we talked about that November meeting to be November 8th. That's Election Day. And I know I personally will be asking for an excused absence that day. So I don't know if there's a opportunity to change that meeting.
We'll look at that.
I think
That just
they'll bring
makes
that back to
sense.
us next month. Yes, that does make sense. Thank you,
Thank you.
Karen. I appreciate that.
I'm the only one that noticed it, I think, but that's okay.
I noticed it.
You did.
Okay, Scott?
No, I don't have anything, thank you.
I don't have anything either, and Anita doesn't either. So we'll pass on to community develop items and reports. Anything on that? Items for the next month's agenda? Do we have any idea? Nothing, but it's going to be busy.
Yes, I'm sorry, I didn't expect to be up
Okay.
here giving what our.
Jason usually does that. Other Jason.
Absolutely. My understanding of speaking with Jason is it's going to be chock-a-block, so
Okay.
we will have many things before you.
It'll be bigger than this?
Yeah.
Really.
We will attempt to make it bigger,
Oh,
yes.
thank you.
Jane, if I may, one more soapbox.
Go right ahead, Patrick.
So if you guys recall, we had, at our last hearing, a little budget sheet. And as you guys recall, we asked for more detail.
Yes, we did.
Which we have not.
What you guys are probably very aware of, there are a bunch of things being discussed at the town level, board cab, other things right now that will be discussed at the next budget hearing for council. Again, we rubber stamp something which really doesn't contain any detail.
Right.
And all the details coming out. And we are not gonna get a chance to review or discuss any of it before it goes to council.
Right. And we did ask for the budget as it was and what all was in it and approved, and we have not gotten any of that. So although it's not going to make any difference, we would really like to have that paperwork so that we can look at it and understand it as it should have been presented. And then possibly we can send a person to the council if we need to.
I believe the next meeting is the 15th.
Oh, well,
That's correct.
unfortunately, the 15th for the town council, is that what you're saying?
August 15th.
Yeah, you're probably right.
So, I intend on going there as a resident and voicing my personal opinion, not as an LPA member.
Well-
But I think also, question that comes to mind for me is, as an LPA member and us as the LPA, should we have a say on some of these items that are gonna be coming up? They're already being discussed online, papers. I know Anita sent a detailed letter with regards to priorities and fees and that type of thing. So, that's, to me, that's an important question.
Well, let's have a discussion amongst ourselves here, since he is planning on attending. Do we wish for Patrick to bring up our concerns as an LPA board and say that we are not getting the information and that we have requested it? We requested it before the budget hearing, at the budget hearing, and after the budget hearing. And it could have been sent to us just as an email to give us over the vacation to go over, but we have received nothing. And that is kind of like, we're just supposed to rubber stamp and not discuss. So how are you feeling about asking Patrick to bring our concerns to the town council as a resident himself, but also as a member of the LPA?
I'm good with that.
I would love for that to
So
happen.
I think we had, when we went through the minutes last month, Patrick brought it up, and
2 months ago.
we had the meeting, then last month's meeting, we were talking about the minutes, and Patrick brought it up, and, yeah, we'll get you the numbers. So I feel comfortable if Patrick represented us.
Thank you.
And I will go back and I'm not sure who I need to speak with, but I'll talk with Daphne about it and make sure that you guys do get the numbers. I know that doesn't help you today at your meeting right now. So that does not fix the issue, but I will make sure that you guys get the budget.
It would be helpful maybe for Patrick to get it before the 15th. Thank you. Okay, any other items or reports? Okay, community development items on next month's agendas, we don't really know more. And public comment? Did you come to talk? We would love for you to say hi. Okay,
Did you learn anything?
okay. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
A second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Adjourned at 10:44. Thank you. Well, that was.